Hello, my name is Tony Blair, and I'm here to talk about the ethical treatment of human subjects in the research that we do as scholars. And this process that we're talking about here applies across the Kairos University spectrum. Students who are doing research in any of our programs or any of our courses for any of our outcomes, as well as faculty and administrators. The idea behind this is that we want to make sure that anytime we interact with fellow human beings, particularly to get information, to get data from them that would be helpful to us in our own research, that we do so in a way that causes no harm to them or has potential to do so after the fact. Now, for those of us in perhaps the theological disciplines, and particularly in the humanities, we are not necessarily accustomed to doing this because much of our research involves secondary sources or artifacts or other types of research that does not involve human people. But for those in the social sciences, and increasingly the social sciences are being used in theology, this is somewhat commonplace. We do interviews, we meet with people, we interview people, we find ways to engage the human community in order to understand what they're experiencing, what life is for them, what their thoughts are, what their opinions are on things. And therefore, we want to do so in a way that has integrity. In many institutions, this process, which is called the institutional review process, results in a fairly cumbersome kind of experience in which long applications are made and long waits are endured. And we try at Kairos not to do that. As always, we want to keep things moving to the degree possible on the student schedule or the researcher schedule. So we've devised a bit of a creative approach in order to help make this work as well as possible. The first thing I will note about it is that there are three different kinds of research projects involving human subjects, at least the way we've delineated them. And this will help us. There's a separate process for each one. Many projects we would regard as exempt from further review. And these are the ones that involve no more than minimal risk to participants, or little or no minimal risk to participants. These are ones, for instance, where surveys are done in which aggregate data is used, and there is no way that anybody would know what any particular individual said or how they responded. Interviews with individuals that are not identified or identifiable when they're reporting a research. Observations of people in public that are aggregate, and again, there's no identifications to specific people. Use of secondary data. Perhaps someone else has done research and has published it or made it available in some way, and it again is aggregate data that does not involve individual humans. Or sometimes here, research for an institution or an agency that requires its own institutional review processes. And if those are as strict as or stricter than what we would do, then sometimes we do not need to duplicate that. This happens sometimes with prisons or nursing homes or other places where there are vulnerable people. A second type of review would be an expedited review. And this, again, would involve minimal risk, but somebody ought to at least look things over. And we can make that kind of determination. This would include research in which individuals are identified or identifiable, but there's no risk or harm that could come to them from the result of that. In such cases, for instance, we would want them to voluntarily assent to participate in this study, or observations of people in non-public setting. If you're looking at people in a small group setting, and it's possible that somebody reading this might be able to interpret that later and understand who the people were involved, that could be an expedited review. Secondary use of pre-existing data that was not originally collected for research purposes, but you're using it anyway, and perhaps we want to make sure if there were not safeguards in place then, there are safeguards in place in your use of it. And research among populations that are not defined as vulnerable, but for which the research could so have potential to create harm or damage. Now, these are all kind of vague categories, but we have a process in place by which we can determine which of these categories it fits into and how we can move forward with it. There are some research projects that will require a fuller review, and we are prepared to do that as well. This would be interactions with any vulnerable populations. And some come immediately to mind: children under the age of 18, people in prison, individuals with impaired decision-making ability, or those who are in some way disadvantaged that they may not fully understand what it is that they're participating in. We would want to go out of our way to make sure that we are dealing with them appropriately. Procedures that could have potential, even if unlikely to cause some kind of physical or psychological harm to an individual. We don't want to re-trigger trauma, for instance, in someone by blithely asking them questions that could do that without thinking that through and engaging in a very careful process. Yeah, a collection of information about illegal behavior that could get someone in trouble legally, or something that could harm someone reputationally or relationally or otherwise. And of course, anything that would be medical or psychological, we want to be careful. And so we have a mechanism for a full review. The process here that we've engaged in involves, for most people, the use of a built-in local review board. That is, instead of submitting this to a central group, we want to have a review team that knows the researcher's context and has some understanding of the discipline, perhaps, and can be the ones who would have the most appropriate knowledge to make these kind of decisions. And for students at Kairos, the most obvious example of that would be one's own mentor team. So in most cases, the mentor team can serve as a local review board, and they can help the student understand if it's exempt or if it's expedited or if it's a full review. And if it's an exempt review, they are the ones that make that determination. If it's expedited, they do the expedited review. If it's a full review, that local review board can engage that process, but also has the institutional resources to call on if they need additional help in making some of those determinations. There is a steering committee available institution-wide that can come and support them. So we try to make this as accessible as possible, but also provide the necessary support. If you happen to be a faculty member or administrator, of course, and you're not working with a mentor team, we can create an ad hoc local review board to help you with that, again, with the steering committee in support if necessary. We've written all this out in a written process and a written policy that is available on Pathright attached to, and we're getting attached to any of the courses or outcomes that do involve research. Feel free to contact me if you need a copy of that and cannot find one readily available. My name again is Tony Blair, and I'm at ablair, A-B-L-A-I-R, at kairos.edu. We also, however, have online resources to help with this besides the policy. The policy includes a hyperlink for you to upload an application. And it's a fairly simple application. It's open-ended, but you can explain your research, the context of it, what category you believe it falls into, any supporting documentation that'll be helpful. And if you're a student, that goes automatically to your mentor team so they can engage you right away on it. And if the mentor team does need additional help, there's an online form for them to fill out that goes immediately to the steering committee and offers the kind of assistance that is being requested. So hopefully we can keep this process simple and somewhat easy, but also maintain our ethical commitment to do well by those that are providing us with the data that we need for our own research. I hope this has been helpful. As you think about that, please check out the full version of the process and the policy. And may your research be meaningful and give you the data that you need. Thank you.